I know how it feels. We also lost. We lost pretty early. It was
Yeah.
it was super bad. And anyway,
Yeah, that was a shame.
I
Anyway,
mean,
guys.
it's like England plays well, but it's the coming home from me. It's like, oh, I can't.
Wait, the song or that it would
Reaching.
be coming home?
It's the anthem. It's like the motto. The coming home, coming home. Oh my god.
Oh man, we love our football.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, thank you for joining us. Welcome everyone to ARCHI-TECH Network number 19. Let's talk free modeling with Mariana, aka the Queen of Fluidity.
Thank you
So
for that.
as usual, we have Guillaume, myself, and Faisal. Mariana Faisal is listening in, but he's having some VPN issues tuning in from Dubai. And of course, we have our special guest, Mariana Cabugueira. Am I saying it right?
Almost there, but it's fine.
So thank you for joining us. Where are you joining from? You back in Portugal?
Yeah, I came back to Lisbon for the summer. I'm working
Oh,
remotely from here.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought like I might as well because we are working remotely for. We are doing like the hybrid scheme now
yeah.
forever, I think.
Oh, forever? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
We got summoned back to the office this week. So this past week we're doing 3 days in the office, and yeah, it was a bit of a shock to the system, but it was also surprising how quickly it like became very normal.
Yeah.
Um,
I was very curious to see that as well. Like to be honest, I really like the office day. To be very fair, I thought it was very. It was more embracing, like to be with your colleagues, and then on
right.
Fridays you could go for drinks. Now it's a bit odd, but I mean, let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I do miss a bit of pub life back in London.
Me too. Me too.
Um, okay, guys. So to give you a little bit of introduction to Mariana, although I'm sure many of you are kind of familiar with her already. So Mariana is a Portuguese architect. She's a senior architect at Zaha Hadid, and you're part of the competitions and commissions clusters in Zaha.
Hmm.
You also teach. You do a lot of teaching, both in
Yeah.
online and in reality, I guess you call it now, or physically at the AA, but also online. You're teaching at your fellow Live Academy tutor. You're teaching at Futurely, and I see you're also hosting your own courses now, right? At
Yeah. Exactly.
Mariana. Cabugueira.com. So be sure to check out the link and check out the courses. And yeah, welcome to ARCHI-TECH Network.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for inviting me.
no, thank you very much for joining. I don't know if you want to add to that or give yourself any other further introduction.
No,
Um,
I think you did like a pretty good one.
cool. So yeah, I think this talk came about. It was kind of I know we chatted around the time we did a topic on parametrics and parametricism,
Mm,
and we were kind of chatting about parametrics and Zaha, and the term free modeling came up, which I thought was like
mm.
a really nice description for that kind of Maya style freeform kind of fluid approach to modeling.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things I always get asked all the time, and I always see on computational forums or Grasshopper forums or whatever, people post a picture of like, something that's
Oh my
very
God.
fluid or like,
Oh,
complex geometry. And they're like, what script does this? Or like,
I know.
what plugin does this? And you just can't reply to it. You're just like, and
I
now I'll
know.
reply, check out Mariana's courses. It's like, and I think people often think that it's parametrics, but it's often free modeling. It's kind of modeling by
I
hand.
know.
So I was curious, is the term free modeling, I mean, it made a lot of sense when you said it. Is it something that you came up with, or is that something that is, a
Yeah. I
term in
actually,
Zaha?
I
Or
kind of, no, no, no. I just decided to start saying, in the beginning, I called it procedural modeling like 2 years ago. And then that was closer to what I do. And then I understood that it's not even procedural. So I said, this is freehand
yeah,
modeling it. So that's why it's not something that you say in an office.
yeah,
But I think it's the easiest way for people to understand.
yeah. I think
Um,
it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a nice
I
term to
think so
add
as
to
well.
this
Yeah.
kind of, computational BIM and all these ARCHI-TECH terms kind of thing.
Yeah. And you know what? Like sometimes I do have to tell to people when they advertise some courses, and like the other day I just saw one like Grasshopper course, and the teaser was Soho Galaxy, and I'm like, man,
Oh
like,
yeah,
dude, no. Sometimes I tell, like, I message them privately, please don't do this. Like, it's just because it's a misconception, then it's like you're misleading your students, and they will actually think that you do Soho Galaxy with the Grasshopper script, and like, please don't do it.
yeah,
Or 3ds Max, and I saw a whole account for 3ds Max, and he had all Zaha projects, and we never ever opened 3ds Max, like, ever. Can
yeah,
you imagine? And I mean, it's just misleading for students. Like,
yeah.
it's the only thing that it doesn't help them. Quite the opposite.
So do
Some
you?
people really like Grasshopper, some people like free modeling, and they should understand what kind of outcome it comes from each, right?
Yeah,
The real outcome.
exactly, exactly. And I think that's why it was. I think
Yeah.
it would be great having you, and we can kind of discuss this a little bit more. For everyone in the audience, we are, I would say, attempting to record this right now. We've got a new setup, so we're just. This is recorded, so if you come up, you will be recorded. But if you want it, we can edit it. So just so everyone knows, we are attempting to record this one. But yeah, in terms of free modeling, do you have a specific definition to it, or it's just kind of a loose term? I mean, obviously, your kind of tool of choice is Maya, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of where this term and your kind of work comes from. But I mean,
Mhm.
is there a kind of definition to it? I mean, if you were, for example, using Rhino 7 and doing that sub D kind of approach,
Mhm.
I guess that would you kind of put that under the same
It's
category?
Yeah, I think it's still pretty constrained though.
Hmm.
Uh, I usually say that I was taught Maya. I didn't decide to learn Maya. I understood I had to learn Maya when I was on DRL,
Mm,
and it was the software that I was struggling the most because it's very different
yeah,
from the other 3D modeling softwares. Very, very, very different. And then I understood that that was the biggest requirement for being um, in competitions for Zaha, or like a building creator, basically. So that's how you create buildings at Zaha. You don't create them from Rhino or from Grasshopper, you create them there.
yeah,
So I knew that I was the best. My biggest strength was at building creation. Although I like detailing, I like rationalizing as well. But I was better at that, so I thought I need to learn the best tool for that. So that's why I decided, okay, I'm going to go full deep into Maya. And then my teacher was awful at the DRL. He was teaching the software exactly like you cannot be taught. Like, this is the tool for extrusion, this is the tool for offset. This, like, the worst way. So when I finished and then I started doing Maya at Zaha, I realized I'm getting pretty good at this. I might as well just start teaching the software. And I don't think that we have the right tools right now to do concept building, not from Grasshopper, not from Rhino. So I might as well just spread a bit the word. So that's how it kind of started, the free modeling thing. And the only thing I can say is, so far, this is a software that translates the better a hand sketch to a 3D. It's very straightforward. So your hand sketch goes directly into 3D, basically. Obviously, if you're good at it.
yeah,
But it's the one that comes closer. Of course, the software has a very good margin for improvisation. Like, it really behaves on its own if you want it. We've seen a lot of pure Maya models, and they're not really my taste, like the tentacles and all of that. So that's when Maya goes crazy. But if you control it, it goes very much in hand with your hand sketch. Maybe let it breathe a little bit, and it's a bit surprising. But so far, it's a software that really I relate the most with free modeling and free hand sketch.
So how does that fit in the kind of workflow in the office? Is that exactly how it works? Like you
Yeah.
start with hand sketches and then um, kind of talk about the first ideas on with
Mm-hmm.
hand sketches and then eventually get into the 3D modeling?
Not necessarily with hand sketch. Some people are really not good at hand sketching, and that's still valid. I've seen really good designers who really cannot sketch at all, and I think that's okay. I rarely see any hand sketch, but I can see them on their own notebook. But it's not something that you show. The sooner you get
Sketching.
into your 3D, the better. Literally, the sooner that you start sketching in 3D, the
Yeah.
better.
No,
Yeah.
I definitely relate to that. I mean, some products you just start sketching in 3D. You know, some start on the sketchbook, but I think an interesting point maybe to because there's loads of threads that will follow there in that kind of sort of introduction was you kind of you were studied at the AA at the DRL, right, and
Hmm.
which is kind of a path into Zaha, right? It's a lot
Hmm.
of do you have an Zaharas, I guess, what do you call each other? ZH, ZHAs,
Yeah, the
go
better.
from the AA into Zaha, and is that because there's a big emphasis on tools like Maya and Maya and
Yeah.
Grasshopper and that kind of thing? There's a very close link, isn't there, to the AA and Zaha, right?
I still haven't figured out why, but it is a very obvious thing to see. We are a lot of us from
Yeah,
the AA.
I guess.
It's the most common pattern. But the thing, and then with time you realize, as their teacher, because then I became their Maya teacher for the last 4 years, that as they finished, I look at them and I think you would really fit well.
Yeah,
And me personally, I'm looking at them through their Maya skills, purely
yeah,
with Maya skills. And then I give their portfolios and then they join. I think it's organic, it's not a rule, but as their teacher, you kind of see like their outcome and you think, you could really do really well in our cluster and you could really help us. And for me, it's my skills.
yeah. I mean, I guess
I usually pick them up.
Zaha was a big part of Maya. She studied there, right? And
Yeah.
Patrick Schumacher as well. I don't know. Did he study there, or he's? I know he's very much involved now, but
I think it was, I'm not sure. I don't think so. He's a teacher there, but I'm not sure.
yeah,
But the funny thing to think is that Maya was a software for animations. So
right,
DreamWorks, Pixar, it still is. And then she kind of brought this software to architecture. It had zero culture in architecture, like 40 years ago. Can you imagine how crazy it could? And then it's funny how it really created a culture of architecture inside of Maya. We model in a completely different way than animators, like completely. It's
mm,
like two different realities. I would never, even the number of polys that they use is insane. We do a lot of low poly, so we have like 3 edges doing all of the work, and animators have like, I don't know, 3,000.
right.
So they would probably think we are crazy using the low poly, and I think they are crazy doing high poly. But it's funny how we kind of created a culture. So we learned the tricks from the people who understood how to use Maya in architecture, and we developed those tricks. Uh,
Yeah,
it's a funny thing. It's like a legacy.
it's kind of interesting. I mean, that's another thread to go down, but I feel like early on, especially with Zaha and there's some other architects that really embrace the animation world for
Yeah,
software because architecture is
Gary.
not. We don't create this kind of software. It's not. It's not a big money industry, so we often inherit technology from like it seems to be
Yeah.
aerospace or movies, animations, that kind of stuff. I feel like yeah, Maya obviously came from the movie world, like 3ds Max as well is kind of part of that genre
Yeah.
of animation. Then there was I feel like a period where you've got the aerospace with CATIA, and
Hmm.
obviously Gary was famous for adopting that, and Revit and stuff like that has come from I think that's that same kind of genre. But now, more recently, I feel like you're seeing a shift back to animation and particularly video games, like things like Unreal and
Definitely.
Unity are just getting. And I've been delving into Unreal a bit recently, and it just seems like the next thing will be kind of very much game engine based. It's just like there's so
You
much.
think so?
I think so, yeah. I mean,
It's
just
still not sticking. Like in reality, when you show it to clients, for example, it's not sticking really well.
yeah, I think
They don't buy it.
it's well. It depend. What do you mean? Like, Unreal
Like
itself.
the avatars,
It's
the agents
it's
behaving.
yeah. I don't think it's like that the experience would necessarily be like a video game. It's like Unreal at the moment is so flexible. Like I've seen there's some companies right now building like the next Revit is kind of in Unreal. You can do all the like design, documentation, and you've got
Hmm.
visualization in that area, VR, then video gamey actual stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and the amount of money that they're making from like these video games is insane. So yeah, I can definitely see. I don't know if it's like architects would be actually working in raw Unreal, or someone, some startup out there will create the next platform that I think a lot of architects will adopt, that will be this holistic
Hmm.
platform. I think, but of course, the big design firms will always have their more specific tools of choice. But yeah, the video game industry seems really interesting, and you're also seeing, I guess, like Cinema 4D seems to be making a revival. I mean, I remember when I was at university,
Yeah.
people were playing with it, but now it's like got really popular. And then you've got things like Blender and stuff like that. So it seems like a kind of interesting time, especially coming from the world of animation and the film industry, which will be kind of cool to see.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
I can see that happening still.
yeah. So then you're also so you're part of the competition cluster in Zaha. So maybe it'd be kind of
Hmm.
interesting to talk about how that works, and like so because we had your partner in crime Chantel on the talk, and so we got a little bit of a flavor for how she works in Zaha, and
Yeah.
because she's in a different cluster, right? Or is she?
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's in a completely different
yeah.
culture.
I mean,
And it's funny how Chantal, she's an artist, right? We know her
mhm.
from being an artist, and I'd never talked to her before in the office because I thought she was this artist. And then like sometimes she shares a screen, we are talking and about something for work, and then she's doing like pure hardcore 2D drawings, cores,
Yeah,
elevators, like completely different from what she does, from what we see that she does.
it's an
Um,
interesting
but
mix.
yeah, super super different. I like what I do is very similar to what I do in competition. Of course, the kind of architecture that I show, which it cannot even be architecture, but the things that you see on my Instagram is not really similar to what I do in an office, for example. Have obviously a lot of constraints and a lot of obstacles when I'm doing for office, and um, it's a typology. Like on my Instagram, what you see is just me kind of pushing for a mile. But yeah, I work for competitions, and our workflow usually we work with clusters like Chantal's cluster. So it's like a collaboration with people doing 2D and us doing the 3D. And usually it also translates to difference of software. So we do the Maya, they do the Rhino.
Right. That's
This is a typical, very, very typical workflow.
Yeah, I was curious about that. So, I mean, for those of
Yeah.
you in the audience not familiar, you guys work in these clusters in Zaha, right? Which are kind of these
Yeah.
groups that form around, a specific, would you say, topic or knowledge base or something like that?
No, departments, they're just departments.
Departments, right? And so, do you
Yeah.
do you ever move between them quite regularly, or is it something like you kind of join them and that's your crew, and if you want to join, you gotta work your way over or something like that? Do you move around at all, or
What do
you
you
kind
mean?
of stay in the cluster?
No, I stay in the cluster, but I collaborate with a lot of different
Mm,
clusters. There are like 4 or 5, and
yeah,
we collaborate with them, but from your own cluster. And moving around clusters, not really.
yeah, that's interesting because
Yeah, no.
at Big, it's the complete opposite. We have like a very there's no clusters or groups or anything. There's only groups like myself, like tech specialists, or Viz
Uh-huh.
team, BIM team, computational team, that kind of stuff. And there's loose individuals, but we form people around projects. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it's interesting to see that, and I know that's kind of the two models. Like I've worked for firms where you are in like a cluster or a team, or a
Yeah.
director has their own thing. Um, but yeah, so you guys are utilizing uh, Maya is your kind of design tool. That's where the essence of the design comes from,
Yeah.
and then you kind of I guess, would you say Rhino is how would you describe Rhino then? Is it you?
I think
What is the
Rhino
process
is like
from
the
like
software.
that initial form, like the driving concept of the the
Yeah,
mass or whatever, however level of detail you model, and then you go into the Rhino world. I guess there's still parts you'd be designing, right? And then but at the same time you're
yeah.
rationalizing and that kind of thing.
I think Rhino is a very good join, to join all the softwares, to kind of combine the softwares. We combine everything in Rhino. So even if I want to do Grasshopper, I have to pass through Rhino before. So Rhino is like an enabler. It's everyone knows Rhino and the basics of Rhino. So it's like the touch point. This is where you land in the end. But most of the work is done in Maya, like the design work, and then you bring it to Rhino either to export or to take the plans from it. We also do most of the plans from Rhino. So Rhino is still like the big guy there, but Maya is the one doing the creative work. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you guys also use Revit, right?
Yeah, we also do Revit, but after, let's say, if I do competition, so after we win a competition, we start Revit, I don't know, a year and something after you do the
Mm,
competition. So we have someone in parallel setting stuff in Revit and kind of agreeing with the client, the kind of file that we're going to submit. So then we start doing Revit, like, I don't know, a long time
okay.
after.
Yeah, like deeper into the documentation process.
Yeah,
So
exactly. In just for that.
Maya does have this grasshoppery function. I'm also like, it is one of the
Nice of you.
few modeling platforms I've not really dipped my toes into actually, and I've been meaning to do your course on Live Academy since we have access to it. Um,
Me
yeah,
too. Me too with you.
and so yeah, but it's on the list of ever growing stuff, isn't it? But so yeah, I'm kind of a complete noob to the world, but there is this kind of grasshoppery equivalent, right?
Mm.
I forget what it's called now. You know what I'm talking about, is it?
I mean, it's not really Grasshopper.
Or is there a
I think
visual?
they're trying to develop that, but we have some very, very good Mel scripts and Python scripts
Oh,
that you
okay.
apply, and they're very useful.
Hmm.
We also have someone who's really good at scripting in the office and doing some very, very good ones for patterns, and then for everything that's more parametric in the mesh, or not more parametric, but parametric.
Yeah,
We do have his codes, obviously, because it's something done inside Zaha. You cannot take it out of Zaha. So I kind of try not to rely too much on them so I can leave the office and still know how to do parametric stuff.
yeah. So
But he's really good. He scripts, and there are a lot of online scripts already done for Mel and Python that you can use inside Maya.
yeah, I was trying to remember the exact name of what I was thinking, but it's totally gone. But that's interesting, and maybe we'll touch on parametrics because we during our parametrics talk, obviously Zaha comes up a lot. Because of
Mm,
Patrick was the kind of coined the
mm,
term, and Zaha's work
mm,
one way or another has become very linked with parametricism, I guess you could say. But how does that actually
mm,
work out? Like, do you feel like your approach? We've kind of we've discussed that it's not necessarily parametrically grasshoppery in a way, but does parametrics play a role in that early stage, or do you find it's a kind of um, in that kind of resolution stage, like you say, like creating
mm.
specific openings or patterns or something like that. But would you say the building form is kind of generated parametrically? Typically, I mean, of
I
course,
think
each product is can be totally
it
different.
depends from the cluster. It depends on the cluster we are talking about. If you're talking about the Z code cluster, they
Mm,
do start with parametric, but then again, you can tell by the scale that it was a parametric script. When you change the scale completely, it will be, I would say personally, a loss of time to be trying and create a script that creates a massive building for concept.
right.
So no. Traditionally we don't spend too much time developing a script to create a concept architecture or the first sketches of a building. Not at all.
Yeah. That's
Not at all.
interesting because Zaha is so linked to it. I think I remember when I graduated in 2012, 13, there was a couple people from university that went there, and the whole emphasis was always on like, oh, you'll be on Grasshopper all the time if you're at Zaha kind of thing from the outside.
Uh,
But I don't think that's necessarily true, right? Or I guess it completely depends on.
no, I think it's even misleading that it's not helpful for the students, right? I mean, it's very good to have people who really manage Grasshopper really well, and still we do a lot of optimization and rationalization in Grasshopper, and it's the best so far to do rationalization, but we shouldn't be rationalizing our building on the first day or the first 5 months. So we don't do that. We would lose a lot. The building would lose a lot if we would start from a script that is constrained with so many parameters. So yeah, I think it was kind of a term that was coined by Patrick, and I think it evolved to something that it's more like a style, which bothers me a bit to say style. But people started relating the name with the visual, and the visual does not mean necessarily that parametric at all. And that is a bit misleading, of course. So we have a lot of parametric even accounts, and then the projects are not parametric.
Yeah, I think.
So it does not help the students, but it became like a word that has an image associated with, and it doesn't really mean that it was done purely parametrically. I think
That's
it's an hybrid, and it should stay as an hybrid.
it's interesting, and it actually, I mean, it brings me to questions about how you design buildings at Zaha, and it's fascinating to me because, I mean, just like Ollie, I come from a world where we use Rhino, and the reason we use Rhino is that we can quickly go from 3D to 2D, get plans,
Mm-hmm.
areas. There are so many ways to like do some first check on like shadows, daylight, even structure or any kind of performance because Rhino has all these kind of plugins around it that's been developed by many engineering company, etc. So you can rely on. How does it like how does the process work? Is it kind of like there's this pure kind of geometric sketch, and is it separated from all this kind of constraint at first, and then you bring it to Rhino to start to understand how the building works, and it's kind of back and forth, or are you able to already kind of understand the building in Maya?
No, I mean, you understand the building in Maya, obviously, but before it's a lot more organic, this back and forth between Maya and Rhino, and even the knowledge that your cluster is developing in Rhino is shared with you organically and on a daily basis, every minute. I have exactly an idea of how much area I'm doing, what's the scale, how many floors, what's the typology, is it a tower with a podium or a tower with a rooftop? This communication between Rhino and Maya, it's every minute, every hour. There's no like a phase that it goes to Rhino and a phase that goes to Maya. It's more organic, and obviously I also do the shadow and the solar analysis, and I do the structural analysis as well, from common sense, to be honest. And it's obviously done in Rhino, and then it feeds Maya with extra knowledge and extra information, right? So it's like they are going hand in hand. I usually work with the Maya and the Rhino open, but I
Got it.
would not dare to model in Rhino.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, you use both software for what they're best at, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Is
precisely.
there a specific? Is there any kind of plugin or something specific to bounce between Maya and Rhino quickly, or is it just like OBJ or something specific like?
Yeah. We have two ways. Usually, we do NURBS. We convert the mesh to NURBS, but that was something that was written in a code for by someone from the office, so it shouldn't be shared. But I mean, come on. I mean, at this point, it's everywhere. But you should have these two ways of either export as NURBS or you export as mesh. We don't do mesh much because it doesn't help for plans. It is useful for some Grasshopper scripts though, so you can still export as an OBJ. Or if you're doing like sending it to a render company, you do it as an OBJ. It's a lot faster because the NERD script is also demanding, but in a good way. Like you can only model with quads, and so on and so forth. So the NURB script is a bit demanding, but it's usually the best way to export from Maya.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wondered if there was. I was playing around with. There's an app called what's it called? Beam, Beam. I think one of the guys is a
Uh-huh.
Zaha guy. It does the opposite. It's like from Rhino to Revit, but it's quite good actually. But I'm sure that was. I wondered if you had a similar thing for Maya.
No, I wish. They are definitely not
Yeah,
compatible, and they don't want to be,
yeah,
which is even more annoying.
yeah. I was gonna say.
But but it's yeah. But I think Rhino is kind of trying to catch up with
Right.
the sub-D thing. I think it still needs like a decade.
Yeah, I was. That's was my next question.
Yeah.
Was like, have you popped your head into that the new like Rhino 7 Sub D? Because a lot of people
Hmm.
who are, maybe not experts in that kind of like modeling are super excited about it. But what's your kind of perspective on
Yeah.
the Sub D world?
Sub-D thing. So I'm in a cluster with very young people. I mean, young, my age, young. So it's people who are really excited with new
Yeah,
stuff and what's coming next and what are the news on this software and that. So sometimes we do these tutorials between us, like, oh, I have tried this new plugin. Do you guys want to learn? And then we all join and we kind of discuss about it. So the other day, a friend of mine actually did a tutorial for Sub-D, and we all attended, and we were excited to see a bit of Maya inside of Rhino. But we also understood that it's still part of the rationalization process. So it's not on the scope of conceiving a building. It's good when you are rationalizing a building, like you've won the competition, you have to submit rule surfaces and all of that. So maybe you would remodel in Sub-D, but it's still inside of the remodeling process and not the creation process. And it seems like it's still a bit far from it, but I have
yeah.
hopes.
I mean, it would be great if you could get it to that point, but yeah, like I said, it's probably got
Yeah,
a long way to go here.
yeah, I think it still needs some time.
So you joined Zaha in was it 2017? Just looking at your LinkedIn,
Yes, 4 years
4 years
ago.
ago. So I was curious if you worked on the Morpheus Hotel because I worked on that in at front doing the facade for it, and I never got to see it actually built, which was
Why?
I,
What? I went to the
yeah.
opening. You did the facade. Oh my
Yeah, I
god!
was the guy. I was in the front team that was scripting that like the freeform
Really?
panels. Um,
Yeah,
I was
I
trying to
know.
think. We did come into Zaha and I presented in
You
20.
did. I
Yeah.
remember. It was my
Oh
first
yeah,
year. Yeah, it was my
yeah, yeah.
first year. Yeah, yeah,
And then that's about the time I moved over to Big. But yeah, I've had the pleasure to work with you guys a couple times up front. And I think from the outside, like it was always impressive to see that, I think from the outside, people think it's just like geometry, you guys are just making geometry, but
yeah.
there's actually a lot of understanding and, thinking about what is single curve, what is double curved and how it works like that.
Definitely.
The Morpheus
Yeah,
Hotel would not have been possible if, the logic that wasn't built in like that. So for those of you
yeah.
unfamiliar with the project, if you look up the Morpheus Hotel, it's this project in Macau. It's this exoskeleton structure, and it's kind of got this very
Amazing.
freeform interior. The project is like the renders for that project were not the most incredible, but the actual thing is so much better. Like usually it's the other way around,
Yeah,
right? The renders look incredible, and then a built products never quite stand up to renders. But this one, it was the total opposite way. Um,
I
and
agree. Yeah. I mean, the exoskeleton became the actual
yeah,
symbol of the
yeah,
project, right? Because it's so well
and
executed.
because I've spent so much time inside the the 3D space of those like
What?
bridges,
You have to
I was
go there
like, oh
then.
man, I
It's
haven't. Yeah, I need
insane.
to go and. I moved from Hong Kong to New York, and then the project was getting built, but it was like 3/4 of the way up, I think, when I left. I did go and see it like in the early stages of construction, but haven't.
Did you experience the bridge
No,
though? The bridge was the
yeah,
best experience. It's like you're being swallowed by a wave.
Yeah, it did.
It's insane.
I always thought, like, as I was flying around it, I was like, the interior. I think the interior space on that project is almost more incredible than like the building itself, the atrium and those kind
Yeah,
of like bridges. I'll definitely have to go back. 'Cause you guys all went out there, right? It was kind of like a office trip.
we did
That's awesome.
obviously. Yeah, we also
Yeah,
party there in the basement. In the basement, we party in the basement. It was a
I
bit
think
odd.
I think some of the front team went. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's kind of cool. I'm
Yeah.
still waiting for a big trip. Yeah, but they went to Burning Man just before I joined, so I was like, damn, I missed out.
Oh my
And
God.
then yeah, we'll see if we ever get back to that normality. Um, but
Mm.
yeah, so maybe we'll also talk about I guess it's your kind of your own approach as well, which is you use this term fluidity a fair bit, and that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like almost your own design process, right, and your own kind of philosophy, or however you might describe it.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be kind of interesting to hear you talk about what is your drive behind architecture being more fluid, for example.
I have a feeling that I believe that the orthogonal architecture it's the ultimate artificial side of architecture, right? No one told us that comfort comes from the 90 degrees, and no one told us that comfort comes from angles. And I still think that there's a lot to be discovered in organic architecture as the ultimate comfort for humans. We came from caves, right? And then we jumped into 90 degrees walls and ceiling. And I have a feeling that that's the ultimate artificial space that we can create. We are just constrained by budget, unfortunately. But I still think that if we do it more massively, if we do believe in organic architecture as the way to go, even the manufacturing process will be cheaper. So we just have to push for it more often. It's not a style. I think it comes from comfort to users. So I believe in fluid architecture. I still think also that architecture is closer to nature. We still are trying to compete with nature's spaces, with natural spaces. Nature is still doing better than us when we build spaces. So why not going fully organic then? Maybe that's the way to go to get closer to nature. So it's not a manifesto. It's just something things that I read and the way I feel about space.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I could totally buy that. Um, and I think there's some really interesting. I guess you could also argue that is the box very human in that, like, in the one part of the human brain you want to be super organized and, like, things in the corners and
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff, but on the other hand, it's like you say, it's a more natural, organic feeling to be in a more fluid space, or like a kind of softer
yeah,
space. Is there, and there's obvious constraints with construction and blah blah blah, but I feel like there's some technologies that are enabling this to be much more accessible, like 3D printing. I don't know
mm-hmm.
if that's something, like, for example, you're particularly interested in, because you can really see
Mm,
how that, the complexity doesn't become so much of a barrier because of the construction methodology. I think there's a really interesting projects
mm,
by Wasp 3D printing, where they're kind of printing these
yeah,
kind of uh, egg-like organic structures. I think out of earth. I'm not sure, or maybe just concrete. But
yeah. I know
yeah,
which one you're
yeah.
talking about. It's incredible, especially the
And
interior. I
the
mean,
roof has got like an opening at the top, which has this really nice play on light. But is that something that interests
yeah.
you particularly, like, or is there any kind of
Mm.
movement in technology in, I guess it would be in the construction space, that excites you for for what you're doing?
I think I was not a great believer on
Hmm.
3D printing. I did a lot of studies on that when I was on the RL, and 3D printing. I mean, it's funny how much it grew in the past
Right.
years, but when I was on the RL, it was very stuck in a
Yeah.
scale that kind of bothered me. And I think now it's growing in scale, right? It's the first time we see an actual house kind of scale being made. But I wonder if public architecture is
Yeah,
possible.
I definitely
And
had a similar kind of feel. Like I was very skeptical, but then recently you are
yeah,
seeing
me too.
like one-to-one houses, or it's gone beyond just a pavilion or something like that.
Yeah, and it also bothers me a little bit on how monochromatic it is, and you kind of use one material or you combine two, but still they are not mixing very well. But I wonder if actually the world should be built on one material only. You never know. You just change the shape, and then the material is the same. And I think that's what 3D printing is doing, right? It works with one material mainly. And I don't know if it can mix more than one. But robotic fabrication is still, I still have higher hopes that we can use robotic fabrication with the same costs that we do cars, for example, and to make it more common and more mainstream to use robot arms for building and to create patterns on buildings. So I really have high hopes on robotic fabrication. That's for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Does Zaha building the is it DDP, the Korean, what is that place? It's like a conference center, right? That was super interesting. I mean, I guess it's kind of robotics, but if anyone in the audience wants to look up that product, the way that they made the panels was this incredible machine, which like all these pins controlled by a robot, and they could bend the panels like into the perfect shape. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's what I mean with
yeah,
robotic fabrication.
and I could
Yeah,
totally see that like evolving. I know that that machine
me
was
too.
super unique and expensive, but I think it was like it shows the future of like that technology will hopefully just become more and more accessible. And actually, the
Mm.
way that we built the Morpheus Hotel thing one was actually not like there was no robots or anything involved. It was apart from like a CNC cutter, it was actually quite
Hmm.
manual, which is kind of quite shocking,
Really?
like surprising. Yeah, the panels were. I mean, it was like a mold was CNC'd out, but then there was a lot of kind of, and then the profile of the panel was CNC'd out, but then assembling it and bending it into shape was quite a manual process. And they formed
Mm,
it onto a waffle structure mold, and then welded or attached the rails and stuff onto it. So
mm,
which is kind of interesting. You can do that kind of stuff on a large scale manually, but I think as these technologies
mm,
become more and more accessible, we'll see it being more and more kind of uh, like it'll be less of a barrier of construction. There's a couple great companies like WAS 3D printing, Branch Technology 3D printing is quite interesting, especially for like fluid stuff. They're really interested in trying to kind of crack that.
mm,
And Icon 3D printing as well is kind of an interesting one. Um,
mm. I just don't think that we also need to prove that the robot can start the building and finish it. It doesn't have to be an extreme. It should be still an hybrid
mm,
process. I think that for assembly, we are probably better because we can improvise. When we are assembly, a lot of issues comes, and you kind of have to be smart and have previous experience to kind of understand how to assembly it's better. But when you're bending and when you are fabricating it, maybe robots can help, and then definitely work on site. It should be human. We don't have to have a robot starting and finishing a project. I think we can make it hybrid.
yeah, I think that's part of the issue is like I see a lot of people trying like they try and do the whole thing right, the like fabric put it
Yeah, I
together
know.
and
Kind of proving a
and then a
point, but
drone
we don't
flies
need
it
that
into
point.
place, and then these little drones put
Yeah, yeah,
it's it's
yeah,
like
exactly.
it will come in time and steps, and part the beginning is fabricated by the robot, and then the assembly is like a bit more human. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
okay. It's still
But it's
okay,
also
you know.
it's fun to visualize this kind of future of completely robotically
Yeah.
made stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One question
Yeah.
I got asked a while ago, which I think is an interesting one, was specifically for like Zaha and Gary. Someone asked me was like, is it the like the software that informs the design, or is it the design that informs the software? And my response, it'll be interesting to hear what you say, is like, actually, Zaha, for example, and Gary, they were almost like it was just using the software needed to create their visions. Like, I don't think the design was like
Precisely.
super, I don't think Zaha was really like a digital architect in a way, would you say? Or was she known for testing and playing in 3D? Or I know she was famous for like painting and her amazing sketches and things like that, but yeah,
I mean, I have no idea if she
yeah.
ever opened Maya, but I'm just wondering. This is like a decision that you do it. You take yourself whenever you're modeling. Right? When I said in the beginning, when you're modeling, Maya has a certain degree of freedom that it can take and kind of go wild and do whatever Maya wants to do in the kind of curvature that Maya does. But usually, you kind of have your sketch in your mind, and you make Maya kind of model what you had in mind. So it's kind of an in between, letting Maya behave on its own. And when I mean behaving, is doing the curvature that Maya does with the algorithm, and in between that and your own sketch, right? I don't think it should also suffocate the software and kind of do whatever you sketch precisely, So personally, when I'm modeling, I'm kind of leaving room for Maya to surprise me, but not that much. Like not wild.
Big surprises.
So I want my sketch to be visible. I want my sketch to be obvious, but I also want to see what Maya is bringing me at the same
Yeah,
time.
and how do you feel like do you know of many other offices that are using Maya outside of, like, off the top of my head, obviously you guys are very well known for it. MAD, uh, UN
UN
Studio,
Studio.
yeah. Actually, I was talking to one of the directors the other day. I forgot to ask him, but yeah, UN Studio. I was trying to think of a few, but it's more of a niche approach, would you say, in terms of like existing architects, I guess. But I'm sure there'll be lots more in the future. But
Yeah, we know a lot of offices that do it because they were ex Zaha employees, and whenever they open their own office, Maya usually
yeah,
goes with them. It's very, very common to see people who left Zaha, and what they bring the most is Maya, the Maya culture. So it's kind of starting to show. I mean, you can tell that it's more and more common to see this
do you see
style
that
or
as
parametric.
part of the? I think I do think we'll see more of it. And
Yeah. I think it's positive as well. That's how you start like to make this less costly, more
yeah,
common and more accepted. I think it's the natural course of
but
things.
one question that I also got asked was like, do you feel that because Zaha is so synonymous with it, do you find there's room for creating unique styles within it, or do you feel like there's still so much room to play in Maya, if you know what I mean, or like that approach, I guess?
I think it will always be fluid. I don't think that fluidity is a style though. So everything will be fluid, and you should just accept that. So you will recognize one project from another one and say they are similar because they are fluid, and that comes from Maya. But there's a room for your own style inside Maya. I mean, we have completely different designers in the office, and they have completely different styles or aesthetics, and they all come from the same software. Even gender aesthetics are very obvious inside the software. I will never forget that once I saw my project leader looking at a sketch, and he said, "I bet this was done by a girl." I said, "Yeah, it was," and he said, "Yeah, I can tell the
Really
way she models, like the touch."
interesting.
And yeah, I never forgot that. There's like a different touch on it. So yeah, of course you can have different styles inside of the software. The software doesn't drive
Yeah,
everything. I think that guys usually do like the BMW
the
kind of style,
BMW style, the sharp
super
edges.
sharp and super crisp. Yeah, super hyper sharp, crispy. So there's a lot of room inside the software.
What would you
It's
say
just
is
a
a
software
more
in the end.
feminine car style?
It's the
Ferrari?
curves. I think it's the curves. It's softer.
Yeah,
For cars,
it's gonna be Ferrari's pretty
It's probably the
polished.
Porsche, no?
I was just thinking about a Porsche. Yeah, I think maybe a
Yeah.
Porsche. Yeah, my favorite is
That's
a
an
Porsche.
interesting
That's
topic.
for
Is
sure.
like just whilst we're on the automotive thing, one thing I always, whenever Zaha posts a new project on Dazine, or even when we do, or some other like well-known architect, one of the comments, and it always comes up with Zaha, is like someone, and not that the comments like are usually full of idiots, but but anyway,
I
just as a funny
know.
talking point, like people
Yeah,
complain that
yeah.
Zaha looks too Zaha, like oh, this looks so
I've seen
Zaha,
them all. Oh
and
my God, I've seen them all. I've seen that this doesn't look like Zaha at all, and I've done the sketch.
but
Can you imagine? I've read that.
it's
This is
when
not
people
Zaha.
complain that it does look too Zahari, like you're getting criticized for your own authentic style looking like it's like, would you complain if you saw a red Ferrari? You're like, God, another red Ferrari? God, they need to like, you don't get that with cars. Like Lamborghinis look
But
like Lamborghinis,
yeah,
Ferraris look like, Porsches is probably the worst. Like they tweak maybe like a panel and then rebrand it. But as architects, we criticize each other for not, like it's almost like you're supposed
yeah,
to delete the project after you're done, never think about it again, even if it doesn't get built, and start again. Which I don't
mm,
agree with at all. And I think it's one of those. Of course, every project is unique and adapts to
yeah,
context and all these different things. But I think the idea that we like throw away everything and start from scratch is a huge reason why we're not a moneyed industry. We're it's almost like, what other industry would
yeah,
throw everything away and start from scratch each time?
yeah. And don't forget that clients come to Zaha
Especially,
expecting
yeah,
a
right.
Zaha, right? Yeah, but you know what? The comment that I'm most comfortable about actually is this comment that people say this is
Well,
not
this is,
Zaha,
yeah,
and which is funny because they don't know better than what people like than people who work at Zaha. But that's a good comment. That means that we are thinking it outside of the box. Okay, at Zaha we are very much encouraged to think beyond what has been done. Like literally, what has been done is not the way to go. It's what's next. What's next? Like on all projects that I'm doing, I'm being asked what's next for that facade, what's next for museums, what's next. So the comment this is to Zaha, it will probably hit me more than the problem. The
yeah.
comment this is not Zaha. You know.
So actually, this brings a question to me. It's like you say the client come from a Zaha. Do they come for kind of the trademark, like
Yeah, they come for
the fact
Baku.
that it's, or is it the idea of that Zaha, like, or are they behind, what you talk about fluidity and like
Yeah.
the experience of the space? Is that what they're looking for, or I mean, I guess there's a bit of both, but
Mm.
are you guys talking at a kind of theoretical level with the clients about the space and
We are. We
what
are.
buildings? Yeah.
It depends on the clients, and it also depends on the on yourself. I think so I don't agree with all my colleagues to what the client's expectations are. I usually think that the client when the client comes to Zara is waiting for fluidity and elegancy. I always thought like this, but not everyone agrees. Okay, I have some directors who actually think they are looking for something edgy, which is not directly associated with Zaha, which is fair. It's the way they want to drive the office, of course. I think everyone, if you're going to Zaha, you want fluidity. That's what I think. And you also want to be like on the cutting edge side of architecture, and you want a landmark. Also, that's something that I always acknowledge. If you're coming here, you want a landmark.
Right.
But it depends on your clients, and then clients are very different as well. Asian clients are different than Arab clients and European clients for sure. So it also depends on their culture. Some people want their culture to be more evident on the buildings. Some others are not really interested into culture. Now we are starting something which is very exciting, which is most of the clients want to be part of the green list building, which is it kind of encourages us to think about it, and we are having a lot of tutorials for that, and we are studying a lot on that and having a lot of consultants for that, which is very positive. And the award really encouraged clients to be part of the green list, which is like a good sign for the future. But yeah, depends on the client 100%. 100%.
Thanks a lot. I unfortunately have to leave you guys. I have to go jump on trampolines and eat cake for my nephew's birthday. But it was awesome to talk with you, Mariana. It's
Thank
great
you.
to have these conversations. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
me too.
Yeah, no,
Me too.
we'll keep it going. I won't keep you for too long because I'm sure you'll be getting ready. I'm sure you'll be putting your England jersey on soon.
To support Italy.
I can't believe you're not supporting England.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed, Mariana.
I can't with the coming home. It's too much. Like, what do you mean coming home? I'm for Portugal. They have been winning a
Oh,
lot more. This is home.
it was a. Isn't that referring? I never know if it's referring to the World Cup coming home. I thought that was always the case, but I guess it's the home of football, right? Didn't football come?
Yeah, the home of football,
They
because they
invented
invented.
football. Oh, well,
Yeah.
fingers.
My God. Oh my God. I've seen the best meme of all times. It said something like, I bet England is going to put this penalty on their museums with
Yeah,
the other stolen things they
yeah,
have.
yeah. Probably fair point.
And that's
Yeah.
true. What kind of penalty
I
was
actually
that?
missed the
Come on.
penalty. What was they doing? Oh yeah, I was in the
Oh
office,
my
and of
God.
course, like I was there's one other English guy in the New York office here, and of course, like I was watching it in a room, office full of Danes. But actually, the Danes snuck out to a pub. I think they knew what was coming. They knew what was coming. Bianca and the crew went out, but I missed the penalty. I was like on a call or something. But yeah, I won't keep you too long. But do we want to? I guess if anyone wants to come up to the stage and ask any questions, raise your hands. Like I said, it is being recorded, so if you don't want to, then I think we've got one coming up. Yeah, if you have any questions for Mariana or you want to ask a question or something or add a comment, coming up.
Yep. Feel
I'm
free.
coming from. I'm using the new setup, so I'm hoping this is going to work. If not, we have Karim. Sorry, is he coming up? Karim.
Karim.
I'm terrible at pronunciation.
It's fine.
Ooh,
Go on.
is he
It's
coming up?
okay. Yeah, he's here.
Do you want to shoot a question? Oh, no. Okay. I guess not then. Oh, here we go.
He's still
Hi.
Oh,
here.
Andrea, what's going on?
Thanks for
Hi, Andrea.
inviting me. So yeah, this is a very interesting talk, and I'm happy to hear from someone who works with very, let's say, irrational design. I'm always trying to figure out more and more how to be a good designer, so to say, and if there's a way to quantify that or in any way verify that. And I know, for example, at Big, it was all about the purity of the geometry and you can't rotate things 23 degrees. It has to be 45, or it has to be geometric and pure in some way, or create a rationalized pattern and stick to it. Otherwise, we can't, you know, reason as to why it's not turning the way the other shape is turning. So I was wondering, how do you reconcile that when you design with these free-flowing curves? Is it all intuition? Is it
I
all
mean,
just yeah?
yeah. Don't say irrational design to begin with.
Oh,
It's pretty rational, unfortunately.
rational, right?
Yeah, it's still very. I mean, you have a lot of parameters to consider before you start modeling, right? There's no pure free modeling when you are inside an office. There is free modeling, but it's not 100% free. You're still inside of what is the scope of a budget, what is the scope of gravity, what is the scope of a typology, what kind of typology are you doing. We also look a lot into things that have been done by the office to learn from it and to upgrade it. So there's a lot of process behind. You can just start modeling and there you go. And obviously there's a lot of common sense on how much this costs and that costs, how much this curvature will cost the project. So maybe avoid doing double curvature here and there because it's unnecessary. So there has to be a reason behind what you're doing. Usually my sketches that are completely dismissed since I joined the office are the sketches that just look cool. Those are the ones that go immediately to the trash. So it has to have a real reason behind it. And obviously, we have consultants for engineering who are doing the project with us in simultaneous. So we also know more or less what kind of structure we can do. At this point, we can do whatever geometry. It's really up to the budget that we can afford this kind of structure, that kind of structure. Not every project can afford the same structure as the Baku, which is the very, very heavy, big truss, basically.
So that makes a
So
lot of sense. As a follow-up, if you have several options on the board, do you use these same parameters to sort of weigh them against each other?
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we do. We have a lot of options on the board. We know what kind of client we have. We know how much that structure will cost or how much span this design option needs to actually be a good design option. I mean, spans between columns, for example, could be a deal breaker. And if you actually apply the rules of gravity and structure in a sketch, will the sketch survive or will the sketch be nothing? So obviously these are the deal breakers whenever you're like brainstorming. And usually the design sketches that are just being design sketches, they don't go very far.
Yeah, I also saw. I think it was in one of your courses. Was it for Live Academy or Futurely? You did a section on tree. Was that right? Like, what is single, what is double curve, that kind of thing, or yeah. And I mean,
Yeah,
it was
yeah, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
whenever I kind of worked with you guys up front, it was clear there was like very good understanding of that kind of thing. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's. I almost think that often doesn't get taught as much. Like, there's all these tutorials, whether it's Grasshopper or Maya or whatever. You can now, like, as architects, we
Mhm.
can create quite crazy geometry. We can create like any geometry at this point, I guess. But there's not that many like tutorials or courses on what is.
I
Yeah,
agree. We should do it. Yeah,
it's
common
almost,
sense of
yeah.
engineering, common sense of budget, common
Yeah, it's
sense of
almost like a
geometry.
geometry
Yeah.
101, like a construction 101. Like, yes, you can create a double curved surface, but these are your options. You're either going to have to do it out of this material or that material. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's definitely
Yeah.
something that's kind of missing. It was cool to see it was part of your course. Was that on Futurely, right? Or was that?
I think it was with Mill. I don't remember, but I think
Uh,
it was just a sketch in the end that I kind of told them
yeah.
this is a double curve, this is a single curve, and
Yeah.
there's a very big budget difference between one and
Yeah.
the other one.
I see we got Locke
Yeah.
has come up to stage. Do you want have a question or something you want to add?
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Yeah, it's a question. I got two questions. Thanks, Ollie, for organizing this. I always come in as a listener just to learn, and then thanks, Mariana,
I
for
love
a fantastic sharing.
Thank you.
Zaha did. I mean, I'm also teaching in university and all that. Zaha is always either the best admired or best hated among the
Yeah.
lecturer because of the geometry and all that. But my question is not about that. My question is, I'm more interested in like you're saying about different software that help you to conceive the concept, and I would imagine it will become a set of documents to be constructed on site. So my question is that number one question is that is there that whatever software that you are using, are they like can bridge the digital gap? Like for example, your drawing can be passed on to a manufacturer, and they have on their own end they can process it somehow and really go into manufacturing. And the second question is that with those, like for example, during our time was like hyperbolic paraboloid, like
Mm-hmm.
by Felix Candela and all that,
Mm-hmm.
that the structure can be formed by straight line.
Mm-hmm.
But now with a lot of this super curve and all that on Earth, what would end up, what sort of material like that you would the possibility of like get them constructed. Yeah, that will be my two questions. Thank you.
So for software wise, it really it takes some time to develop the project to a point that it should go be manufactured, right? So for a long time, you're just jumping back and forth the two main softwares, which is Maya and Rhino. We don't develop a building to be built tomorrow. Okay, we do spend the time that we can on the building to make it perfect to be manufactured after. Okay, so documenting sides, usually we do Revit and Revit CAD, Revit Rhino, and that's where we stay. But before, I would say, very long months just developing the building. And when you are developing, if you want to go to a better level of detail, you should go to Rhino and then Grasshopper. But still, it still needs some long time before to be conceptualized to a point that you can really migrate from Maya to documentation. And AutoCAD is still playing like a very big role, at least in this firm, right? I know that in our firms people don't do AutoCAD at all, but we are still relying a lot on AutoCAD and Revit. And regarding the structure, we all have a common sense on structure as designers, right? But we are not engineers, and I don't think we should play the role of engineers. I even sometimes I try to kind of say, I think this structure should be this one or that one. And I get the comment usually, but are you an engineer? And I'm like, no, I'm a designer. So we have engineers for that, for structure. And you do work with them simultaneously in pair from the first day. And design is also being driven by them and by what they say that can be done in engineering wise in structure. And then obviously it depends on your budget. If you have really high budgets, you can just do a huge mega frame everywhere in the project, and it's super expensive, like Baku did. And that's like zero budget. You can just go crazy with your forms. If you want to do the traditional structure, which is beam and columns, which is usually what the office does, you just don't see them, but the structure is pretty conventional. And then most of the design work is just cladding. So sometimes we see super crazy buildings, and what's actually happening inside is orthogonal grid of columns and beams. We do start with orthogonal grids in every project to see if it works. And then the cladding does whatever it wants. But I'm still more fascinated by what you said, Felix Candela, and some work of Calatrava, where your structure is not only performing as structure, but it's also design. I think that's what you meant with the hyperbolic systems. I really prefer to see those, but we are still cladding and relying a lot on cladding to create spaces. But it's still pretty fascinating to see structure performing as design, like
I think it's
hyperbolic
for
structures
me
do.
one area that would be really interesting is like if the kind of very fluid geometry was driven by like real environmental data, and it's shaped that way because it's super efficient because of solar heat gain or something like that, and it's
Exactly.
something that would have completely been impossible to create without a computer helping to guide you based on the information. So I think that could be a really interesting kind
Yeah.
of variation or addition to that.
Yeah, Thank
Yeah.
thank you very much for the answer. It's just
Yeah.
because I'm like involved with quite a few master students, and when they come out with form like that, and personally, I can tell you, I don't have an answer for them when they're using nerve, and like what is the final finishes? Will it be concrete or will it be fiber, carbon fiber, or all those things? But what you're saying is very interesting. Like you basically treat the structure and the facade or the eventual cladding as a two separate thing. So
Definitely.
my answer to them is always, say, go and study Zaha Hadid's work, or in some way like Frank Gehry's work, and like if you can do it, I think definitely it can be done. It's just that you know how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the answer. Thank you, Ollie.
Awesome.
I'll move myself
Sure.
down to
I
the
think
audience. Thank you.
we got I don't know if you Mr. T, Mr. Hong. Do you have a question or
Yeah, thanks for
what's up?
letting me speak. I was actually curious about the design process, and um, this question is actually for all the mods. Um, but for your firm, like, is is it is it a team effort? Is it like, where do you get the inspiration to come up with the design, and how much of it is a combined effort? Thanks.
I think it's very subjective. Everyone has their own way to design, right? And it's still very respected everywhere. In every office, I hope your process is respected, whatever process you need to develop your designs. And that's something that they do at the office that I work for as well. So usually in my process, I tend to read the brief, get keywords, get visual keywords, understand what the client wants. And then from visual keywords, I start modeling, and I do hand sketch, or I start literally modeling in 3D. And imagine a team of 4 people doing the same. I like to have a lot of options. Some people like to bet on one option. I have 1,000 of options when I'm modeling. I get like it bifurcates to something else and to another option, then another option. So I like to bring as many options as I can, but obviously being smart regarding to the brief that you have, right? So what's the best solution for this question? That's what I do. And then you join 4 people, let's say 5 people designed. We join, we show the options, and we brainstorm together with our director. And it's kind of obviously filtered by what the brief wants. Okay, it's not what's the best design, it's what does the brief want and what's the best solution for this brief. And that's when you cut down the number of options to, I don't know, 2 or 3. And then we say, okay, let's continue developing, or let's just focus on these 3 options and bifurcate to some other options from them. And that's something that goes for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then you get like one option gets selected, or like an hybrid between 2 options, and the team kind of works together for that option only. So obviously it's a very big honor when your sketch gets like all the way. Not very common though, but you're very happy when your sketch is the one that they're betting their time on, and then the whole team kind of gets together and let's make this option even better and develop interiors and develop the plans. And it becomes a very, very strong teamwork. So
Teamwork
that's the
makes the dream
process.
work. We got a
Yeah.
couple more questions. I need to see Kanika. Hey, welcome.
Hi, Mariana. Hello,
Hello.
Amber. Thank you. It was really nice to hear about work process in firms like Big and Saha. Thank you so much for organizing this talk.
Thank you.
Actually, my question is related to urban designing. Like we always talk in architecture and urban designing about fluidity and curves and everything. So from you, I wanted to know that how fluidity and softwares like Maya influence design making process and urban designing. Like, what is the influence of it? What are the decision criterias, and where does it actually get used? Like, something if you can tell me about that, it would be really nice.
Okay. It's funny how you're saying that, because I think that parametric design really is very helpful for urban design. And
Yeah,
even when I'm
definitely.
doing, it's even more than just pure Maya. Okay, when I do master plans, I need a grander force that kind of unifies this urban sketch, right? And this grand force, it's not that easy to do it in Maya. I'm just thinking about practical terms. So I would most likely bring this big force that gets everything together and parametric in a way from Grasshopper, for example. I think urban design it's still better from a driving force, and then we model everything in Maya. Okay,
Oh,
so there's one grand gesture that should come from one software, or sometimes the grand gesture is also done in Maya. Okay, I'm just thinking out loud what's the fastest way. But
GG.
you also can do it from Maya. It's like sketching. So when you're sketching your urban design, you get like the main lines, right? The main flow lines. And then
Yeah.
from that, you get your buildings. And then from the buildings, you get your streets and you get your facade. So it's just like steps and steps of scale. You can start from Maya, but obviously whatever grand design that you can get from something that is more detailed, like Grasshopper, it's more helpful, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you,
Thanks
Mariana.
for the
You're
question.
welcome.
And then we got Jesus. Jesus has joined us. Welcome.
Jesus.
Hey.
Hola, hi, Oli, Mariana. Thanks for
Hello.
the time. Shout out from Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico. And first of all, thanks for your time and your words. You are one of my first inspirations. And I
Thank
want
you.
to ask you something about the futurism. The futurism. What do you think that is the futurism of today compared by the proposal that made by Antonio Saintelia in 1914?
Okay.
Do you mean you talk about futurism? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. I am asking about the futurism. What do you think that is the futurism of today? Talking about materials or and urbanism.
The futurism of today, I'm not sure. Seems like it's a contradiction of meaning, but I do think that we were probably not going to think about the future like we did before. Obviously, again, this is very subjective. I don't think we will be speculating on design too much. We are speculating on other things that is actually data from the present, and that's even more exciting. I think that nowadays we have means to reach to present data, as in climate changes, as in solar analysis. We have loads of data that before you could not reach. You had to be specialized, or it was on a specific book. Now we have no excuses to actually use this data in our buildings. So I'm pretty sure and pretty convinced that this future of architecture, as boring as it might sound, it will be the architecture that uses the present data. And so I hope. So that's my idea of futurism. We did a lot of design speculations in the past as a nice futuristic sketch. I don't think that's going to be the future anymore. I mean, it's good to have speculative design. It's fun. I think that we should actually get the present data of present status and put it in our buildings. That's what I think the
Interesting. I
futurism
think
should be.
Faisal actually brought that up.
Right.
I know he's a big Patrick Schumacher fan,
Yeah. Thank you.
and that was kind of parametricism 2.0 was like we've gone through this period of experimenting, and now it's kind of applying it to these future issues. I think that's an interesting kind of
Yeah.
next step for parametricism 2.0.
I think so as well, yeah. I think we have
Right.
less and less excuses to do it, right? Even if we are not asked to do it, because no, your client is mostly not going to ask you, and at school they're not going to ask you. We have to do it on our own as architects. We have to bring the present status to our building. So
Yeah.
what's the solar analysis? What's the impact on the environment? What's the impact on with the shadow? What's the impact of the footprint? We have to do it. No excuses.
All right. I appreciate that and your answer. And I have just one
Sure.
second question. I'm sorry. I'm very quick.
Yeah,
Do you think I appreciate Oli and Marina? And do you think you both guys? Do you think that is very important today to know how to draw for an architect? I mean, the most important thing is to
yeah.
draw, or
It's a good question. I was forced to. I always draw really nicely, but I think it was just entertaining. I don't think it made a huge impact on my designs to be able to draw. And I was forced in my university to draw my plans till the fourth year, like literally forced. And that made me really angry when I got to the DRL, for example, where everyone was a 3D artist, and I was drawing nice plans, and that's not something that you can put on a portfolio as well. So I don't think there's a real connection between people who know how to sketch, hand sketch, and people who know how to do good 3Ds. I've also seen some very, very good designers in the office that draw really poorly, like really poorly, and design amazingly. So I wouldn't lose hope.
It's an interesting one. I think, yeah, I mean, you've seen like Gary, for example, was not like an epic sketcher. It was, it's like it was just like a flavor for where
Yeah.
you're going with it. So I
So
don't think it's, I definitely don't think it's like the be all and end all. I'm absolutely no sketching or drawing phenom at all. It does kind of raise a question about, you know, when I studied my first year at university, they didn't allow you to use a computer, and I'm not sure if I agree with that
Same,
anymore.
yeah.
Like, you know, I compare it to like, do English lit students have to, you know, do all their essays with a typewriter or like hand write it out? Like, obviously, it's not
Yeah,
a one-to-one comparison, but like,
exactly.
are we getting too tied up
claro.
with this kind of like notion that we have to learn by hand and then get into the computer? I kind of think we should be jumping in there kind of
Yeah.
early on. I don't know.
I agree, but how much do you think we would lose if people stopped drawing 100%? Like,
I
do
don't.
you think we would lose anything on design?
Yeah.
Like, even from first year, they are not doing drawings anymore.
I think drawing helps understand things spatially more than having to orbit in a 3D environment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I
Yeah,
remember when I was sketching like urban sketches, I was paying attention to details that I wouldn't if I was not drawing them. That's true.
right, right.
But drawing your plans by hand, do you think it made a big difference?
No, no. Like rotating your lead holder so that you don't get a thick
Yeah,
line. That's
I
not
think
teaching
it's
you, but
just like people would still do it anyway. You're not like banning paper from the office, but I definitely think like to avoid poor young students buying all these bloody pens and like all these rulers and stuff, and then like you have it for a week and then it's just in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe just one more question, Kiko. I know you've came to the stage. You're a regular in our talks. Do you have a question or something you want to add?
Hi, good morning. Yeah, sorry,
Hi.
I'm like joining late. Hi, Mariana, how are you?
Hello. Fine.
Just like a really quick comment, maybe more than it is being a question, but talking about like the softwares and what it is being taught at schools and things like that. And the other day I was at a talk by Tariq Khayat, who was also an Azaha alumni, and he was saying, he's like, yeah, a lot of educators would definitely disagree with him when he says expand your digital skills as early as possible. And in terms of like, he said like design is a talent. You either have it or you don't. And when you have it, then it's easy to develop it and further expand it. But if you don't, it's going to be harder, obviously.
Oh man, that's
But
so discouraging. Why would someone say that? Please.
yeah, but and he was saying like the way the industry is heading right now, where it's headed, and what's happening is it's all about the softwares that you know and how you can realize things onto your computer. Which to a certain extent, like I kind of agree because for my school, I just finished my undergrad, and from day one it was all AutoCAD and like very minimal hand work. But then once you finish like the first year, you move to Rhino, and then you kind of like neglect AutoCAD, and really nobody touches AutoCAD after that. And here in California, at least, most firms are mostly Revit, and actually most of all of my internships and even the job that I have right now, it's because I know how to do Revit. And that's what's interesting. Like you see how the first question, and the other day,
Is a
like I had,
software.
yeah, exactly. And like the other day,
Yeah.
I had like this quick interview with like, and the whole questions were like, how did you do this? What
Yeah.
softwares? How long did it take you to model this? How long did it take you to do all of these
Yeah.
things? And yeah, they're like, yeah, sure, like the design you have, the designs you're showing us are great, blah blah blah. But it's like, tell us the digital process of how you achieve
Yeah.
this good looking product, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, like and even some students with us who, all of us graduated straight into the pandemic, 2020, but those who were able to get a job almost right after graduation into the pandemic was because they knew certain softwares. And one firm was like looking for somebody to do how is really good at Grasshopper, or how is really good at Revit, or smaller scale firms that they do mostly single family residential. Maybe they're like looking for people who are doing more AutoCAD, but even these firms are moving into Revit. There's like a huge push into Revit here in California. And actually a lot of firms are saying, we want to do Revit. Even the consultants themselves are pushing architects to do Revit because that's what they're doing. And architect firms, a lot of them are struggling here in California to find people who are really good at doing Revit, which I didn't know that until I was like applying to places, and they were like, "Oh, finally we have somebody that knows how to do Revit."
Yeah, but then it comes the biggest question: do you want to be the Revit person?
Exactly. And sometimes I hate the fact that I know how to do Revit because it's
Exactly, but that's something I tell everyone whenever you're doing the portfolio. Like, you have to show the software that you want to be the person doing it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And like the very last version of my portfolio was literally focusing on more design-based softwares and like literally taking out all the drafting stuff. And I'm putting underneath like, yes, I'm putting what softwares that I use, or like
Yep.
a quick comment of like steps of like process, like, oh, this was done first in Maya and then taking it to Rhino and then rendered in V-Ray or whatever. But and including the job that I got as a Revit technician, even that, like, I actually showed them more design-based stuff rather than I showed them Revit stuff, because there was like a test that I had to like do and pass and whatever. But I mean, sorry, like, yeah, I'm just going like in tangents and like blabbing more. I'm
No, I
assuming,
know, but sometimes it's really unfair when we are good designers and we are hired as technicians, like you
yes,
said.
yeah,
But some people really like that job; they want to do that. So, and
I
I'm kind of making it hard for these people to do that, and then they're bringing designers to that. But I definitely really recommend everyone to, whenever you're doing a plan, whenever you're doing a render, to have a small footnote saying in which software did you do this. Like, even if you picture yourself as a boss and you have an office of 30 people and you're hiring, obviously you want to know, first of all, what kind of software do you do? Because the design is my office design, and then of course I want you to brainstorm with me, but still, I'm still the director, I'm the vision, but I want to know the best. Can you draw, like, can you design, can you use a pencil,
yeah.
more or less like that.
And also, like,
So,
right now, trying, like, with all this push into like the younger people getting into the architecture, trying to understand like which softwares to learn between
yeah,
Maya and Rhino and
exactly.
Grasshopper and
So that's why
Houdini
we have,
and
yeah.
Cinema 4D. Now there's like a huge push on like Cinema 4D. Everybody's like trying to learn Cinema 4D, and yeah, it becomes like, yeah, I don't know.
But that's why I think
And
that's why it's good that we are being more and more transparent in the industry. Like, what kind of
yeah,
softwares do we do in this office? We do this one. Does anyone do Cinema 4D in any office? No. So don't spend too much time on it unless you want to research. I also know some people who, like the opposite, quite the opposite. Someone who was going for an interview and he was very good on renders. And actually, his boss said, "Where did you render this?" And he said, "V-Ray." And he said, "Can I buy the license and then you do that?" And he said, "Yeah." So it was the other way around. It was like he was proposing a software, and then the boss, the director, really bought the license for him to do it. So you can also convince, and even at Zaha, sometimes we are investing on Twinmotion, we are investing on this because normal employees say, "Hi, this is really cool. Can we try this?" So, but that's less common, right? They're
yeah,
expecting you to know the other skills
and
and
yeah,
not to
some,
buy new licenses on new software.
yeah, like some companies like where I'm working right now, they're pushing this Unreal Engine idea, and they're looking for volunteers throughout. The company has like offices all
Yeah.
over the world, and like they're looking for volunteers to join Unreal, like Epic Game, the company itself, to test certain products and to try to push and
Yeah.
understand the software and how it works and how they can implement that into the workflow in the office, into the design and things like that.
And
So
that's super
yeah, I mean,
exciting. Yeah.
yeah, I know it is very exciting, but it's kind of like for the younger people coming in, like, what should they focus on like how they should be doing,
Yeah.
like, should they go a little bit more into traditional way
It
of like
depends on
doing
their
things?
drive,
And
right? It depends on
yeah,
who you are. Some people, like Ollie, they like to research into different softwares. I have my own limitations on starting a new software from scratch, to be honest. But one of the reasons why I started teaching Maya was exactly because of that, because I really realized that this has been pretty misleading, and I wish I knew this before. Why didn't I know that Maya was the software that you do to conceive these buildings?
Yeah.
And which is pretty odd. Why does no one know? And we are insisting on 3ds Max or Cinema 4D when employees are not doing it. So
I
that's
mean,
why I
you
decided,
definitely are pushing the Maya culture like in a whole different level.
yeah,
The other day, I was talking to some people, and I was just saying like Maya this, Maya that, and they were like, "Yeah, we were looking at this like Mariana lady," and she was doing like, "Yep, yep." So your
yeah. And
name and
even as a
Maya is like
student,
going,
it would have been
yeah,
a super fun like university projects with Maya if I knew Maya. But
yeah,
not everyone should know Maya. You should know the software that really translates you the best, like that. It
exactly,
like a software that's not an obstacle to your design intentions. I think that's the base. The common ground is the software cannot be an obstacle of your design intentions or strategy. So I think that we should also be more and more transparent on what kind of softwares we do where.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
if you want to apply here or there, then focus on that. Like
I
so,
think that
as
this
simple as
was like
that.
yeah, for
driver
sure.
for
Yeah,
Architect
thank you.
Network was like to have these conversations like with yourself. So with firms like Big and Zaha, it's always been a kind of a behind closed doors of what actually happens and the tools we use. And there's no real secret sauce. It's not
Yeah,
like we have a Yarka button that we press, or like you guys have this
exactly.
magical Zaha code, or it's not. It's just we use these tools, but it's it's
Hmm.
the designers that the thinking and collaborating in this environment. I would say I totally do get it, and I know Mariana and I have been doing these like portfolio reviews, which you can check out online on YouTube, on Blessed Arc and stuff like that. And I do like
Mm.
emphasize with students because there is all these softwares out there. It's like, which ones do we bloody learn? And everyone tells you a slightly different one. The reality is that there
Yeah.
is only a handful that are most commonly used. And you can probably work that out quite quickly. But the other thing is that at university, especially at universities and my own experience, like, 80% of my time was learning how to design. Like it's very design focused, and design can be taught. That's why we go to university, and
Mm.
our projects at the beginning are not so great, and they're they're a lot better at the end. So design can be taught,
Yeah.
but not as much emphasis is spent on giving you the skill set to go into practice, and that's usually around the technology side. Like technology is such a huge part. And I was also seeing a trend in like people
Yeah.
skipping a lot of critical stuff and coming out with like a Houdini skill set. And not that's absolutely nothing against Houdini, but you come out into the job market and you could be the best designer in the world. But if someone has to pay all this money to train you up to
Hmm.
implement you in that team, it's a big expense. So um, it's almost that the Steve and the Wozniak side. You need the design and the technology, and because you have to be a profitable member of staff at the same time. It's a business, so it is a tricky one.
Mm.
And like Marianne was saying, I think it's critical on like what you want to do, what kind of architect you want to be, and where you want to go. If you want to work at
Yeah.
Zaha and be part of your competition team, and like you only use SketchUp, it's not it's probably not going to fly to it's going to be a difficult sell, even if you're the
Yeah.
greatest designer ever. So yeah, I think, but I do emphasize, and that's
Yeah.
partly what these conversations are, to kind of talk about what we're actually using in practice, have
Mm.
conversations with people in practice. But
And I know what it's really funny that you're saying that design and technology go hand in hand. I think that's one of the reasons why teachers don't really engage into design. It's because they are so clueless about the technology behind. They would rather not even encourage
yeah,
the design. You know what I mean? Like in Portugal, we were not encouraged to do design. It was
yeah,
even like a luxury sign if you were designing your architecture. We are very much into Caesar and Sotomora, and the humble architecture is the one that is praised the most. And it's also
yeah,
the less challenging design-wise. It has no design, actually. So, and that's most likely because they are absolutely clueless about
Yeah,
how to get it built when
and
it's
yeah, that's
designed,
the
what
other
kind of
aspect, isn't it?
technology is
The
behind this.
construction thing is a
No.
big knowledge that's design, technology, and construction or fabrication, whatever you want to call it. For me, that was the like three things that are key for a future architect. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Agree.
I know we've had you for a little while. I'll finish on a couple super quick questions. Do you have a favorite Zaha project and also a favorite big project?
Favorite Zaha. It's funny because
I know it's difficult to choose one, but
that's a tricky question. It's very, yeah. I'm gonna be honest. When I joined the office, I was
yeah,
mesmerized by the unbuilt projects of
yeah,
Zaha,
yeah.
like
Of
the ones
course,
that
like
never touched
when
the
you go into a
ground.
firm, you see all these like secret
So I
gems.
cannot look. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. The ones that never made it or they lost and I cannot look past them. So
Okay, that's
I'm
interesting.
obsessed with the unbuilt projects. Really, they are really my favorite. And I also know the designers that are involved, and they are really, really good designers. So for me, they're like the holy grail of architecture. And they will
Yeah.
never be seen, but maybe we
Do
can
you have a
recycle
favorite
them
big
somehow.
project that's been, let's say, built?
Yeah. I think for
The
me,
culture?
not the buildings, but the culture. I like the culture. Yeah, I like the big
Yeah.
culture. I like the firm culture. I think that's what I praise the most on the
Cool.
big company.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
That's
a culture
definitely
that you would like to
the
join.
secret. So, you're not a
The
fan?
buildings, not so much.
Oh no.
Not a fan.
Interesting. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know we've had you for a good hour and a half. It's been super interesting talking to you. And
Thank you, Ali.
yeah, no. And
Thank you for
yeah,
inviting
I
me.
hope
It
we've
was
given
really
people
nice.
time to get to the pub and go to the England game. You're probably already at the pub if you're intending to go there. But yeah, no, thanks again for joining. We'll be sure to check out Mariana's courses. I don't know if you have any upcoming course you want to plug, but I know you've just released your own website. You can go onto Mariana's Instagram and
Yeah,
go check it out, and you can go and buy all of her courses and learn the world of free modeling. So be sure to check that out and follow Mariana.
yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, thank you for having us. We'll
Thank
have
you,
a
Ali.
talk next week. It's going to be our 20th talk. I don't know what it is yet. It's going to be, we're cooking something up though, so it should be good. But yeah, we'll tune in next weekend, same time on Sunday. Thanks everyone for joining. Mariana, thanks again, and have a good Sunday. All right.
Cool. Thank you,
Thanks,
Ali.
guys. Yeah.
Bye bye. Have a good Sunday and have a good match. Ciao, ciao.